My name's Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
And I'm Tom Sh00t.
Talkin' Sh00t is the name of the game. This week, Jimmy.
October 1st, new month. Fall is here.
I was going to ask you, man, what you're working on, but the truth is, you're not working on anything in terms of page production, because you sent us some PDFs, some CBR files, and I have to say, pretty sexy stuff.
Yeah,
congratulations,
nice.
man.
Great work.
Thank you. It is funny because, of course, I'm still working.
Yes.
That's
never ends.
You turn in those pages. I'm waiting now for edits. I sent in some of my ideas for notes on that. But covers, end pages. We're building books, so still a lot more to be done. I'm not done with that project yet by any means. But yes, it feels great to have essentially the draft is done and turned in.
If tomorrow, like you were home and all of a sudden you got struck with an idea that like blew your mind, that would involve you changing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, like would you just be like, fuck it, this book's
5
done?
pages, I'm punching myself in the
Yeah,
face.
okay.
Shut up! Don't tell anybody that
if
great
it's
idea.
like something brilliant that like you needs to be in your book, and you're like, no, I'm just gonna let it go.
You know I would have to do it.
Yeah,
I can't turn that part off. But
there's that on Stephen King's On Writing. He described his process a little bit, and he said he always kind of has 2 volumes that he's working on concurrently, so that when he finishes, say, draft 1 of one of them, puts it in a drawer for 6 weeks. And starts continuing on the other piece, because when he revisits it 6 weeks later, that kind of masochism of all the toil that went into putting that initial draft together is the past. You kind of forgot about it, so it's easier to kill your darlings, as a cliche goes, and everything like that, man. But the wound is too fresh for you, Jimmy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And fortunately, the way the books are now, you do have this big lead time.
Yeah.
So I can work on covers. I can work on, whatever other materials, a different project, maybe another Red Room cover. Whatever it is, like I can take that break and come back with something akin to fresh eyes, or at least not, the bad parts, the struggle,
right.
Not fresh in my brain. So yeah, it is a nice luxury as opposed to, say, doing a monthly book where it's like deadline is Friday, and I'm turning it in Thursday night at midnight. You don't have that luxury. But yeah, it's good. The one thing I will say, like I finished this week. I turned it in the beginning of the week.
Saw the stack on your Instagram.
I posted the every cartoonist's favorite photograph. But my mind is already in that anxiety, insecurity, what's next kind of mode.
Yeah.
We always complain when people are like, "Oh, what are you working on? What's next?" I do it to myself. That's nobody asks me that question more than I do, and it's a strange thing. Like I think of these projects mostly as like, what am I going to do for the next year? Mm-hmm. It's not a cover job or something like that comes and goes, but the idea of like, okay, what am I excited enough about that I can sustain for a year? So I'm a little bit, that's in the back of my head now. I'm turning over some ideas about what that might be.
That anxiety has always been like so deep in the back of my mind that I just create these projects that take me years and years, man. Like 4 volumes Hip Hop Family Tree, 3 volumes X-Men Grand Design. It's going to be at least 3 volumes of Red Room. WYSIWYG is 288 pages. Like, just I need to know that there's something going down. That in between stage, very nerve-wracking for me.
Yeah, it is. We're just not in the mode of not working.
And Pittsburgh is salt of the earth, man. Blue collar, working people, man. Having that downtime feels lazy or something.
Well, the other part is like I have about 37 ideas that I'm interested in, and you can't work that way either. Yeah. So, some of the anxiety isn't just like, oh, I'm not doing anything, but it's more of like, oh, I can't do everything.
Certainly at this point, man, it's like I'm going to be 40 years old next year, man. It's like got a finite amount of books left in you in your lifespan, so like choose the right ones.
That's a big thing, timing. There's a lot of considerations as to where you put that energy, because as you say, it is finite. It's
now the fall season, right? Which means haunted house weather in the Eddie P household, man. And went to a couple 100 Acres Manor. Highly recommend it. Get the VIP ticket, man, so you don't have to wait in the line. But in that line, waiting to go check out the haunted house, I realized that working at a haunted house was the last job I had.
Yeah. I was going to say, hold that thought for 1 second, because like these haunted houses should be hitting you up for like blurbs.
Yeah, right.
When was that? When was that job?
It was the last time I did. It was 19 years ago. So like 2022. it's going to be my 20th anniversary of like being a comics professional, being able to like pay the bills without working like a regular proper job. And it just came to mind like while we were out there, you know, waiting in line to go check out the house.
Congratulations, man. 20 years. 20 years. That's unbelievable.
Now, I'm not saying that my life wasn't subterranean and deeply in poverty for 10 of those years. But at least I didn't have to have a boss that's an asshole or something like that, or have coworkers who are schmucks.
We now and then we talk about sports or something like that, and I always think like whenever you talk about like who's the best at whatever, you know, fill in the blank, whatever choice, longevity is so important because of those bad days, because of like figuring out how do you get through that, you know, the deal that fell through, the check that you needed that for whatever reason doesn't show up. Like, it's amazing. 20 years is a lot of, you know, jumping over puddles and getting things done and scraping to get by, even in good times.
Thinking about those, like, first 10, too, because, like, you know, that subprime mortgage, like, 2008 thing was in the midst of all that stuff, man. And, like, I was never prepared for the part of the freelance illustration job that requires you to, like, bang on doors to get paid.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And I remember seeing stuff like, you know, social media sort of was created in that time. And I remember Coop posting up, and he would like redact some of the names of the people who were in the emails and letters he sent. But he's barking at them for payment. And I'm like, and Coop was at the height of his game. And like, it just was so scary because I'm like, it happens even to you. Like I'm a 21-year-old kid expecting disrespect from these old fucks, and you're established, you're known. You could create some chilling effect against the business that's not paying you, and you still have to deal with that. It was actually very exhausting, like an exhausting period of time for those reasons, because now beyond just doing art, you have to be a bookkeeper and you know, see, oh yeah, these bills are outstanding.
Not only that, like the people that you owe money, you know, we're all paying. Everybody has bills. You need food. Nobody gives you that credit,
right?
You know, it's like, what are you doing?
Well, I think that's how like that sort of generation got so comfortable being like, I'm just the guy at DC. I'm just the guy at Marvel, because it's like, okay, I don't need to chase anybody. I got my one big client, you know, and I'm set. You know, it's almost like a day job. You know?
It is a day job.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's totally just a cog in the system, man. But I don't know that I would change anything, because there's no price on freedom.
It's so true. And I love not commuting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of benefit I find with that. But you're right about, you know, it's not all perfect.
Jimmy, when are you going to bring the stack for us to show off?
Yeah,
man?
You know what? You know, like when Howard Stern would like yell at JD for not announcing his engagement on the show. It's like, should we yell at you for not premiering your stack here and instead giving that exclusive to Instagram and Twitter, who don't pay your bills?
Good point. Good point. You know, you can't help it though. You're just so excited. Like when I actually turned in that file, it's like, I have to take this picture. I can't help myself.
I know it hurts too, man, because you took picture of this paper on the wrong side.
Well, you know, there'll be plenty of time for the paper on the right side pictures. I don't know if you caught it or not, but like I had one of them was like the art folder too. I'd already tucked some pages into that, which was nice because as I was working, I could review pages in like that book spread format. So that's part of why I didn't bring the stack either. It's not that photogenic because some of it's already kind of filed away. You know, you like that the raw pages.
I'm sure there's like some forensics types in the audience who are going to be like zooming in to find like the little clue you forgot about that blows the whole game, you know?
I hope so. Everybody scrutinize my art and social media closely. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but I always worry about that because I'll have pages like scattered around, who knows, you know, maybe sitting on my scanner. And I always think about that before we shoot videos or anything, like
something
make
like
sure nothing is
reflected in your glasses or something.
Now, there's a lot of cloak and dagger revolving around this comic of yours. Is that a clue?
I don't know how excited I could get for a Cloak and Dagger comic, Ed.
You mean the Dabney Coleman movie? Or okay, the comic. Okay, yeah.
This is a Cartoonist Kayfabe,
Yeah,
Tom.
I'm sorry.
Welcome to the program.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Total Recall Show.
not TV Kayfabe.
Yes, right.
Though I have been watching that Squid Game, 2 episodes of that. That's really blowing up, man. The Korean TV show. It's on Netflix. I'm really glad Red Room came out months before this thing came out. Not there are just some spiritual similarities in that there's like an anonymous place that these people have to go. They have to be knocked out to go there. Masked people where you don't see a lick of skin. Just like little stuff.
Well, Ed, you've been telling us about this Red Room idea for like a long time, like way before it came out. And it did feel like so perfect and so timely that like somebody is going to do something that hits that note or maybe even uses the same title or something. And it's like, you got to get this thing out before somebody else jumps your claim.
Well, let me tell you, man, I'm by no way suggesting that.
Oh no, not at all. Yeah, not at all. Yeah.
But I want this thing to succeed because I'm already getting my butt kissed, and I want this thing to succeed so that real offers come through.
Well, yeah, that was kind of like when I did American Barbarian. It was like, okay, John Carter's coming out, which is kind of like a sci-fi barbarian. If this thing is a hit, people are going to be knocking on my door to make the American Barbarian move. And then it was like the biggest flop of all time. Like, okay,
there are canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Sometimes those canaries are beyond dead. At the end of it, man.
That synchronicity is just a strange thing, having those similarities come out. Like when Aphrodisiac came out, Black Dynamite came out at the same time, and it's like neither of us were talking to each other, and the timing was such that it's not like we saw what the other people were doing, but it still came out like within months of each other.
Here's the other thing that struck me while watching it. Only watched 2 episodes, no spoilers or anything like this, but I started to think about, because we don't veg out when it comes to story media. You're actually still doing homework.
Yeah,
and it just made total sense to me, and I just never thought about it before. But story structure is 100% everything when it comes to narrative and storytelling, because this is a translated piece of media. The dialogue that is said in English is not the dialogue that was said in Korean. So it's about arranging the things properly, about orienting the stuff, creating emotional roller coasters. That is everything when it comes to narrative. And I just didn't think about it in those terms until I realized that this is a translated work, and it's really pulling me in. So there are like these universal ideals or strictures that really need to be respected and adhered to. It's just something I'm going to really keep in mind while putting together the future stuff, man. Kind of like, versions of what we did in that screenwriting course, man. Just keep shuffling things around until it really works, because they created some really nice emotional roller coasters that you don't see coming, and it binds you to the characters. It's very cool.
That kind of storytelling stuff is so interesting, and you see it again and again. I forget what I was reading, but this guy was talking about doing it on each page. It's all the same, like it's principles that we have encountered all over the place, whether it's whenever we're having one of these shoot interviews and we're hearing top storytellers talk about it, reading these books, Robert McKee's Story kind of talks about having that cliffhanger ending, on each page, each moment, each scene. They are these universal ideas, and they do cross media. Once you start looking for them, you see them everywhere.
Yeah.
One of the values of, leaving comics and looking at other media and other stories, because so much of it does inform. Story is story.
Yes. Speaking of which, man, other media, got very friendly with Jeff Darrow, and he did some work for Andrew Vax. Some of those pieces were sort of serialized in Dark Horse Comics. People in the comments when I was asking for horror stuff brought up Andrew Vax's name. So I started on the Burke series of audiobooks. Man, this shit is hardcore. Because, as a lawyer, a lot of his practice is about saving kids who are in dire trouble. Oofa.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I just have read some of his comics adaptations and was like,
the stuff that guy has seen.
It's hard stuff to look at.
Yeah, it's super brutal. But I'm compelled in the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of the word to just keep going, because it is such dark material, but there's like a Red Room there's things I could use for Red Room, not like just spiritual thing, just that can fit into my comic. So it's like I'll continue listening to these audiobooks, so the Red Room readers don't have to. You know, I don't have very many rules for myself in the Red Room comics, but I do have a few, and this guy goes there. So it's just, you know, one more piece.
Can you give us one of your rules?
Probably not a good idea. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, that is this sort of thing. Like, I mean, we're very transparent, you know, with process and stuff. But there is some stuff that it's like, okay, why am I even bothering making the comic if I'm just going to tell you this part, you know?
That's fair. That makes sense.
Tom, what you working on, man?
I'm working also on a top secret project. As Jim's top secret project was sort of wrapping up, mine was getting started up. And like you're talking about, I'm doing a lot of stuff where I have like, you know, larger story kind of stuff, like sort of macro story kind of, you know, arcs and stuff, you know, figured
Giant
out.
Man. That's code for Giant Man.
Working on, but then I also sometimes I'll wake up and I'll just have like a sequence in mind that I don't really know how it fits into the whole, but I feel compelled, and so I'll start like drawing this sequence and stuff. And so I have my sort of like stack within Procreate where I'm doing all this stuff, and you can sort of take these things and shuffle them around. So I'm doing, it's like, oh, wait a second, this thing that I drew, you know, 2 weeks ago, that would actually work really well up. So I'm moving the pieces around and kind of like letting this thing, you know, form in like a really kind of like holistic way, which is, you know, having a lot of fun with. And this is almost like pre-production or whatever, you know. This is like the starting gun hasn't fired of like start drawing or start turning in scripts. That hasn't started. So this is all preliminary stuff. And I think about like, you know, film production, like the book on film, where it's like this time before production starts is almost like having infinite time. You have all the time in the world, so take advantage of it. Do as much as you can in that time, because once you start working on the thing, you're not going to have time to think about stuff. You're going to be going on instinct and gut, so make sure you've primed the pump. So I'm sort of priming the pump, but I am getting close to the point where it's like, I want to just draw a finished page now. So, and you know, I might be pretty close to making that jump, even if maybe the starting gun hasn't gone off yet. But hopefully the starting gun will go off soon, so I can, you know.
You've always inspired me in that way, man. Just probably beginning with Transformers G.I. Joe stuff, where I just remember getting lunch with you every week and seeing you fill up sketchbooks, and you would have so many ideas, and you were making use of that preliminary time. Like when you work with these publishers, you know, there's just these things that have to get signed, and so many hands are involved in the process before, you know, negotiations, all that contractual stuff. And if you're just sitting there idle,
yes,
you know, like that's what are you doing, man?
And you know,
you gotta have confidence in the process.
Maybe 90% of what I'm doing is gonna get chucked, but hey, it was worth it for that 10. Because otherwise I would have just been kind of, you know, doing whatever.
I think that's the approach for any of this stuff. Yeah. You know, you see those books that'll come out for a successful movie, and it's like all the concept art and the sketches and stuff. You don't see any of it on, you know, you see such a small amount on the screen, but you need to do that kind of work to like uncover it, almost be like sculpting something and removing all the excess to get to whatever the sculpt is underneath it all. It reminds me when we took that screenwriting class, the instructor talked about like her, I don't think it was even a first draft. It was just like a notebook where she would ask every question she could come up with about the story, the setting, the characters, and then attempt to answer them. And it was all preliminary, just like get to know this subject as well as I can. And I think about it all the time because so often, like if I finish, you know, like I always say, I know my story and characters when I get to the last page. Well, that's not the most useful time. You know, you talk about if I find some pages to redo, you avoid redoing them by learning as much as you can before you get to page one.
Think about it in terms of like, say, the comic strip or something where, you know, you see that Jim Davis Garfield at the beginning of the strip, and then it becomes codified much later. How much would it suck to codify your characters or your idea for what your story is 3 pages from conclusion? It's such a stripped down medium when you're handling everything yourself, and there's not like this like sprawling series. You have a finite amount of pages. I keep trying to imagine like what is the analog for the kinds of comics that I'm making, and with these like kind of one and dones, 20 pages. Like, is it like a Twilight Zone kind of experience? Like, novels really don't work because you could just put too much into a novel. Like, you would need 60 issues to tell that story. Perhaps a very good, tight 90-minute feature film is close. But even like a 2-hour feature film is like, would require too much, page real estate or something to tell the stories that I'm trying to tell at this exact moment.
Well, that's what I've been like the past few years, trying to figure out how to give you the bang for your buck that you get from other media, because I do keep finding in comics, it's like, man, if this thing that I just paid $5 for, if this were a movie or a TV show, I'd be balling it up and throwing it away because all you gave me was a pre-credit sequence and that's it. So like just figuring out ways, and is it like just more panels? Is it is it more work? And there is actually there is an elegant solution somewhere where it is like implied story,
yes,
and things like that, and it's just a matter of like arriving at that.
There are those comics that we unpack, like in Asterios Polyp, or a lot of Jaime's work whenever he's really singing, where they give the readers a lot of respect, knowing that perhaps some won't get it, but they will take things out. It's this art of reduction, and you got to have faith in your readers. It's something you have to deprogram yourself from, like big two type storytelling, because the editorial approach is treat the reader like they're dumb and spell everything out, extremely clearly. But I guess like making these comparisons, what I'm really going for is just like for inspirational vibes.
Sure,
like you can't listen to Infinite Jest to make a great 22-page comic. Like it doesn't make sense, man. Like, stick with some good one and done material that happens in 1 hour. Like we're watching that Masters of Horror series where a bunch of horror directors do like a 1-episode thing. There was a translated an adapted episode from Bernie Wrightson and Bruce Jones's Jennifer was an episode, right? And they expanded it. So that's like taking like a 5 or 6 page comic and expanding that into an hour-long thing and creating new beats and junk like that. Almost always, like, the quality of stuff is just whatever, but there's still a lot that you can pull. And in the best of circumstances, the best of these, well, visually speaking, some of this stuff is really slick and stylish. So you could at least take some of that.
Sure.
Well, yeah, if I could make a recommendation, I'd say that old Avengers TV show, Emma Peel and John Steed, because it is like you're gonna get a lot of like really cool visuals, crazy kind of like horror, psychedelic, bad guys and stuff, and it's each episode's discrete. There's no like ongoing arc, but you do have these two characters, and it's just interesting that they were able over like all these episodes to maintain like a sexual tension between these two main characters, and of like, are these two gonna fuck? Are these two fucking already? Like, to sustain that without any sort of plot advancement whatsoever from one to another. You might find something you can use there.
The first half dozen episodes or so of Prisoner have some of those
I was thinking
qualities.
of Prisoner also. Yeah.
And especially because that's a contained, like that's a whole world they build, so there is some continuity in terms of that world, and maybe you get a detail here and there, but it's not you could still tell the story and miss an episode and not be confused by it. They're very contained in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny when you brought that up. I was thinking, like, got to revisit The Prisoner. It's been a while.
Everybody should. The other thing, Tom, that you mentioned is like waking up with some idea and recording that. I like that a lot, and you'll see storytellers talk about that. I think of like David Lynch or somebody like that who comes from these, maybe a different direction of building the story where it's inspired by a scene, a moment, a character, an image, and then almost putting that down and continuing the development of your story, and eventually that'll work itself or it'll be in the next work or whatever. Right. But that's that preliminary kind of prep where it's like you have this big box of ideas, box of gimmicks in wrestling terms, right? Get Ted DiBiase in here. We've got a gimmick, the perfect gimmick for him.
Jim,
I'm gonna have those stored.
I'm gonna blow your mind. That comic that you just finished and worked on and all that, the entire story of that was sitting in your subconscious, waiting for you to extract it before you did one bit of conscious work on it. So all this, like, and same with this story I'm working on. And so all this, like, priming the pump kind of stuff that I'm doing is a way of getting my conscious mind to get something to hold on to like, dig this fully formed work that's, like, residing somewhere in me. And some of the things that I'm drawing are clues that my subconscious, breadcrumbs, my subconscious is sending me to, like, find this fully formed thing. So it's just a matter of getting out of your own way. And so we got to come up with all these, you know, convoluted ways of getting, you know, out of your own way.
Is that Joseph Campbell?
Or his teacher, Jung,
Right.
Carl Jung. It's all there.
Yeah, I never think about it that way, but you know, the flip side is you don't record these impulses and these ideas, and you don't get to kind of like mine them or follow them into that deeper source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to bring it up somewhere that you can actually do something with it. But it is there.
And it's amazing to bring all of that full circle and think like the whole monthly production schedule of comic books sort of eliminate that. At least in the past. I mean, now I think people sort of, you know, they work up to like, okay, you're going to take over X-Men, and, you know, you sort of have a little bit of time to channel those ideas. But in the past, it would have just been like, you got a month, or maybe you have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, and then on to the next thing. And it avoids, you never have that chance to like dig in and really kind of look around and have enough ideas that you get to pick and choose and choose the ones that speak to you and that you think work the best.
In those cases, what ends up happening is you get something like, you know, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee working on the Fantastic Four, and like so many issues just being total nonsense. And then all of a sudden you get like the Silver Surfer and Galactus, or, you know, like you're sort of, you are doing that preliminary work, except your preliminary work is being published.
That feels like so much of comics too. I sketch so little in comparison to the work that's seen on the printed page, just with this kind of schedules I've kept, you know, keeping things full circle, like always making sure I have a project in the works that's going to be seeing the light of day, and they often take up all of my time. So having like extra time to just woodshed and practice, it just kind of goes away. So what happens is you are just simply practicing on the page, and like assessing your work that way. I remember when we were interviewing Tim Vigil, he said something about like, I try to identify 5 things to work on after each piece. Like, he draws something and then he finds 5 kind of shortcomings, and, you know, wants to practice on those bits for next time. And it could be as simple as you know, like the shape of the finger, like the finger pointer bones and stuff like that, man. But you gotta have self-awareness.
I remember that after Plain Jane's was like my first, you know, the first book of that was like my first under a deadline, you know, working with an editor and stuff. And I can remember getting to the end and having a list of like, you got to learn how to draw ears. You know, like it was all this stuff because you just didn't have the time to go research every element, but you quickly learned like, oh, I need work in this area, that. And some of them are dumb like that. Like I remember literally looking at ears and being like, nope, you gotta figure that part out. Everybody has them.
Yeah, it's the stuff that makes the work more rich, man. And I've had infinite conversations with cartoonists after dinner at a festival or something, where, you know, these are veteran, seasoned pros, and they'll say stuff like, I've been faking drawing necks my entire career. You know, the jugular and these tendons and all that. I've been faking it for so long. It's about time that I really, you know, show me a sketchbook where there's just a bunch of heads turning and stuff like. And honestly, I mean, like, I'm in that place too. You know, like tricky little veins right here.
Well, the threshold from like good to not good in comics is like very, I don't know how to put it, but like everybody in comics draws better than they need to. That they could communicate everything they want to communicate with much worse or much less polished drawing. So it's like if his neck sucks, but everything, like, you're fine. Like a shitty neck tells the story just as well as like a perfectly, you know, defined neck.
I agree 100%. And it's a thing that people struggle with. Like, you know, I teach and you see it, that students, how they draw, how well they think they draw is a huge thing for everybody. Right. And I get it. I'm self-conscious about how I draw. Everybody I know wants to draw better. Tim Vigil wants to draw better, you know, like, give me a break. But you don't need, good drawing is not key to communicating an idea visually.
Yeah.
It's one of the great takeaways. I got from you, Jim, on probably one of the very first times we traveled, man, when I was like 21, 22 years old. And
draw shitty.
That was the big takeaway from hanging out with you. Just start drawing shitty.
Composition is key. Like that was the thing, man. Like you can't besmirch good composition. That was like something that you said, and I was still a kid. I was still in that headspace of just trying to draw cool stuff, you know, not thinking about composing all that much.
And there are comics that are about drawing cool stuff.
Yeah.
And the story is de-emphasized in many of those. You know, a lot of the comics that I bought and collected and artists that I love, it was not because of the story or the storytelling or the characters. It was because of the cool drawing.
Yeah.
You know, certainly that's a popular part of comics, but not the essential part for telling the story.
You know what, man? We have we could do this forever.
Sure.
Could.
And we do have some comics that are very visually written that we need to go put under the microscope.
That was a polite way of putting it.
So let's get the heck out of here. Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. We'll notify you when new videos are available. Jimmy, what you working on?
I'll tell you one thing I'm working on. Alex Toth. What would Alex Toth do t-shirts? We talked about it on a previous episode, and the fans were clamoring that they agreed that should have been a t-shirt. It is one now.
And all those fans, this is the first time in internet history where all the fans who said that should be a t-shirt bought it.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you guys for that.
And if you haven't bought it, you can find links to all of our t-shirts and merchandise below this video.
Check out Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design, both still in print. And check out my YouTube channel, Total Recall Show.
What do you have in print, Jimmy?
Plain Janes and Street Angel, Deadly Squirrel Live. Get them wherever you buy books and comics. Join me on patreon.com/JimRugg to see how I make those books.
Red Room Comics are out there in the wild. The Antisocial Network is completely on the stands. 4 issues of that, but we're going to have a trade paperback hitting the shops November 9th, I believe. It's going to have about 50 or 60 pages of extra additional material. You're gonna want that stuff as well. You made note of the merchandise that we have in our spread shop, but what else do we have?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter. We have switched over to Substack. That seems to be all the rage, so if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. The link is below this video. It'll let you keep up with all of our videos, any news we have, specials on the work we make, hopefully some giveaways in the not too distant future. So join us at those links below this video.
I like that idea, man. Give them those marching orders so we could be on our way.
Read more comics.